Welcome back to Panatel's. This is a place where dark history slowly comes to light, and forgotten stories are finally heard at last. The war was over, but its leftovers were not. April 16, 1947, arrived quietly on the Texas coast. Just after dawn, the Gulf of Mexico lay flat and heavy, almost like it was holding its breath. In Texas City, the day had already begun. You could hear the shift whistles, the sound of dock engines coughing to life. It was the steady, familiar rhythm of a port town that truly believed it had survived the worst history could throw at it. At 7:30 that morning, a French cargo ship named the Grandcamp was moored at Pier O. She was an old ship, a liberty ship born for the war, but her new purpose was peaceful. Her holds were packed tight with over 2,300 tons of ammonium nitrate. Fertilizer, they called it. Safe enough, they said. It was destined for hungry fields on the other side of the ocean. Then, at 7:45 a.m., a dock worker noticed something. A thin wisp of smoke slipping out from deep inside the ship's cargo hold. It was gray, almost polite in its appearance. Someone rang an alarm. Someone else hesitated. Fires on ships weren't exactly unheard of. They were something you could manage, something you could reason with. By 8 a.m., the smoke had thickened. Men scrambled aboard with fire hoses, but the water just hit the intense heat and hissed back as steam. It was then that the captain of the Grandcamp made a decision, a fateful choice that would later be debated in courtrooms and mourned at gravesites for years to come. He ordered the hatches to be sealed shut. He was worried the water would damage the precious cargo. So instead, they pumped steam into the hold, a technique meant to smother the flames without ruining the fertilizer. What no one seemed to fully understand that morning was what ammonium nitrate becomes when it's seeded, when it's heated, when it's pressurized. No one on that dock truly grasped what they were standing on. By 8:15 a.m., the smoke had turned a sickly, yellowish color. It was wrong. It curled into the sky like a warning written in a language that very few people could read. And yet, instead of running away, people gathered. Dock workers called their friends over to look. Office clerks stepped outside their buildings. Families stood along the shoreline, and children even climbed fences to get a better view of the spectacle. Firefighters arrived, a mix of volunteers and professionals, all answering what they believed was just a routine call. At 8:30 a.m., the ship itself began to groan. You could hear the metal popping, the sound of rivets screaming under pressure. The hull of the Grandcamp was visibly flexing as the pressure built inside what was now a sealed steel coffin. But still, no evacuation order was given. The crowd remained, watching, waiting. By 9 a.m., the fire was burning hotter than ever. The deck of the ship was too hot to even touch. The smoke was now so thick it was blotting out the morning sun. And then, at exactly 9:12 a.m., time broke. The explosion didn't just sound like a blast. It sounded like the end of the sky. The Grandcamp simply vanished in an instant, transformed into a white-hot fireball that rose thousands of feet into the air. A shockwave slammed into Texas City with the force of a solid wall. People were thrown from their feet miles away. Windows shattered as far away as Galveston. The blast was so powerful, it registered on seismographs hundreds of miles distant. Then came the rain, not of water, but of steel fragments falling from the heavens. Anchors weighing tons were hurled through the air like toys. A massive tidal wave surged through the harbor, lifting other ships from the water and smashing them back down like they were nothing more than driftwood. Every single firefighter near the dock was killed instantly. In a single terrible breath, the entire Texas City Fire Department ceased to exist. At 9:13 a.m., the city was burning. The shockwave had ruptured oil tanks, which erupted into pillars of fire. Chemical plants ignited, creating a toxic, deadly inferno. Homes collapsed. Fires began to spread block by block, feeding on broken gas lines and spilled fuel. Survivors staggered through the streets in a daze. Their clothes were burned from their bodies, their skin hanging in strips. Some wandered in complete silence, too shocked to speak. Others screamed for names that would never answer them again. By 9:30 a.m., the hospitals were completely overwhelmed. Doctors and nurses worked without anesthesia, without enough supplies. The floors of the makeshift clinics ran red. The dead were laid out in rows, many of them unrecognizable, many of them never to be identified. And the danger was not over. Moored nearby was another ship, the High Flyer. She was also carrying a deadly cargo, sulfur and her own load of ammonium nitrate. Her crew watched in horror as the flames from the burning city crept closer and closer to their vessel. At 11 a.m., a desperate effort began to move the High Flyer away from the docks. Lines were cut. Tugboats strained against her weight. But the fire had already reached her. By noon, thick smoke was pouring from her holds. The city had barely begun to count its dead when a second clock started ticking. Throughout that afternoon and deep into the night, firefighters from all the surrounding towns rushed in. They fought to contain the raging blaze, to save what was left of Texas City. These were men who had just witnessed hell on earth, and yet they stepped right back into it. Some of them knew what was likely to happen next. Most just prayed it wouldn't. At 1:10 a.m. on April 17th, nearly 16 hours after the first blast, the High Flyer exploded. Another devastating shockwave tore through the already wounded city. More destruction, more bodies, more names erased before the dawn. By morning, Texas City was unrecognizable. Entire neighborhoods were flattened, reduced to smoldering rubble. Over 4,000 people were injured. The official death toll was 581, though everyone believes the true number was much, much higher. Some victims were simply vaporized in the blast, never to be found. Others were buried in mass graves, their identities known only to God and the Gulf. In the days that followed, questions rose from the ashes. How could the danger have been so badly underestimated? Why were crowds of people allowed to gather and watch a burning ship loaded with explosives? Why did no one truly understand what sat in that cargo hold? Lawsuits followed, of course. It became the largest class action case the nation had ever seen at the time. Grieving families sought answers, but the courts offered legal rulings, not closure. Texas City rebuilt. The ports reopened. Life, as it does, eventually resumed its rhythm. But a memory like that does not burn away so easily. Even now, some say that when the Gulf air turns still, when the morning light hits the water just right, the silence there feels heavier. It's as if the city itself remembers the hour, the minute, the exact moment when fire fell from the sky and history refused to let go. In 1947, Texas City learned a terrible truth. Some disasters do not end, they wait.